Hello guys, so welcome to my channel. I just heard that ibrahimtraore's security was actually paid, to assassinate him. Yeah, it was key to unalive him, and thank God everything is being revealed, like everything is coming out. A lot of confession and all that. Well, one thing is for sure is that nobody will uproot this man, ibrahimtraore. I mean, the God is always protecting him. God is always by his side, because definitely what he is seeking for is nothing but the best for his people and and Africa generally. He's seeking for the best. But let's just watch this video and watch how it goes, an open confession of how his security got paid just to unalive him. Just stick to the end.
He didn't rise to power through family connections or quiet elections. He didn't come to office with the blessings of Paris, Washington, or multinational corporations. He arrived wearing military fatigues, backed by a promise to reclaim Burkina Faso for its people, and a warning to the foreign powers who had grown comfortable in its gold, soil, and silence.
Africa is waking up, and no one can still close the eyes of Africans on our reality. No one can still come to divide us, to impose on us what they want. That's why we have done everything to be here today to speak to you.
At just 34, Captain Ibrahimtraore became the face of defiance in West Africa. In his first few months in power, he dismantled the traditional script, one where African leaders bowed politely to old colonial masters, welcomed Western troops onto their soil, and signed away national resources in exchange for debt, aid, or survival. Traore did the opposite. He kicked out French forces, canceled foreign mining contracts, and announced that Burkina Faso would no longer beg. For some, it was a revolution. For others, a threat that had to be eliminated. And that's when the attempts began. Not whispers, not warnings, but actual plots. Professional, persistent, and precise. Gunmen, bombs, bribes, and betrayals. Coming not just from rebel groups, but from men in suits, uniforms, and diplomatic offices. What Traore didn't realize, or perhaps what he did, was that challenging the empire doesn't just get you criticized, it gets you hunted. There have been more attempts to end Traore than you can count on your fingers, but this recent attempt shocked everyone. So what happened? First, let's take a look at the most famous coup and assassination attempts on Traore. According to the reports, it all started in January 2023. The national pulse was beating to the rhythm of football chants. Streets were quiet, homes filled with cheers, and television screens flickered with the colors of the African Cup of Nations. On the surface, it was just another night of pride, hope, and distraction. But elsewhere, behind closed doors, in places without cameras, a much darker game was underway. Far from the stadium, a group of men had been tracking something else entirely, the movements of the head of state, not to protect him, but to erase him. The plan was meticulous, coordinated around the assumption that security would be relaxed, attention scattered, and schedules predictable. While the nation celebrated, a device had been discreetly placed in a residential compound associated with the president. It wasn't meant for intimidation. It was engineered for silence, a swift detonation that would leave behind rubble, rumors, and no room for rescue. But the plot didn't end with the bomb. There was a backup, one even colder in its calculation. Should the device fail or the timing slip, an ambush had been prepared for the very next morning. A decoy vehicle was to be sent ahead. Gunmen were planted at precise intervals along the motorcade's expected route. The idea was to force a delay, separate the convoy, and create confusion long enough for the main car, carrying Traore, to be hit with everything from rifles to RPGs. This wasn't the work of amateurs. The tools were too clean. The execution plan was too rehearsed. The movements of the president had been monitored for weeks, possibly by people with access. People who knew when he left, when he returned, and when his guards changed shifts. The plan assumed more than just surveillance. It required cooperation, or at least silence, from someone inside the machinery of the state. But then something unexpected happened. Not from the police, not from the local army, but from abroad. A message came in, allegedly from Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. And it wasn't vague. It was surgical. Names, coordinates, times, even the make and model of the vehicles involved. The warning arrived mere hours before the device was set to detonate. And just like that, the entire plan unraveled. The device was neutralized. The ambush team fled. And Traore, who was never supposed to hear the explosion, was informed of a reality far more explosive. That someone, somewhere, had already begun the process of eliminating him before his reforms could even take root. This wasn't a public assassination. It wasn't meant to send a message. It was meant to end everything without a sound. But it didn't. And as intelligence officers retraced the operation, one unsettling truth became clear. This was only the beginning. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The failure of the football bombing didn't discourage his enemies. It simply changed their tactics. If they couldn't kill him from the outside, they would try something even more insidious. Bring him down from within. And this time, the weapon wasn't explosives. It was the ambition of men in uniform. Men who once saluted him. September 2023 began like any other month in the capital. Official business moved forward. Troop rotations continued. Cabinet meetings were held. But beneath the normalcy, something was unraveling. There were whispers inside the barracks, late-night meetings disguised as briefings, and quiet phone calls that stopped abruptly when certain names were mentioned. It wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. At the heart of this second attempt were men who had once stood at the center of power. These weren't rogue officers or fringe actors. They were part of the post-coup establishment, insiders. Men who had tasted authority during previous regimes and were now watching it slip away under Traore's rule. But what they lacked in official power, they tried to compensate for with influence, pulling favors from old networks, rekindling loyalty from discontented officers, and reaching into the gray zone between national politics and foreign interests. The operation they began to organize wasn't about causing chaos. It was about surgically replacing the president, flipping the structure of power without letting the public know until it was already done. What gave the coup its teeth wasn't just military coordination, it was its strategic timing. Just weeks prior, Traore had doubled down on his anti-colonial rhetoric, proposed sweeping reforms to the mining sector, and moved closer to regional military alliances that excluded traditional Western partners. These moves shook the political foundations, not just in Burkina Faso, but far beyond its borders. The deeper intelligence agencies dug, the more troubling the connections became. The planned coup appeared to link back to Paul-Henri Damiba, Traore's predecessor, a man deposed but not entirely gone. Though in exile, Damiba had reportedly been maintaining communication with figures still embedded in the security apparatus. There were even whispers that some funding had come from external sources who had everything to gain from a reversal of Traore's policies. This plot was different from the first. It wasn't trying to destroy Traore in a flash of violence. It was trying to erase him through the procedure. A coup that would be justified as necessary, branded as a stabilizing measure, and perhaps even applauded in some foreign capitals. But once again, it failed. The plan leaked. The conspirators were named. Arrests were made. And Traore remained in control. Yet the lesson was chilling. His enemies weren't always hiding in shadows. Sometimes they were sitting in the same room, wearing the same uniforms, speaking the same language of patriotism, while preparing to replace the revolution with a replica of the past. When coups fail and bombs don't detonate, those who crave control resort to something older than war itself, gold. Not the kind you mine from the ground, but the kind that buys silence, betrayal, and death. And recently, as the reports suggest, the people trying to remove Captain Ibrahimtraore had already exhausted two approaches: elimination through destruction and removal through deception. Neither had worked. The president was still in office, still popular, and still untamed. That's when the strategy shifted again. This time, away from overt power grabs, and toward the one place no bullet or battalion had yet reached: his inner circle. This new plan didn't involve generals or mercenaries. It involved a private jet, an unannounced arrival, and a man who didn't carry a weapon, he carried money. According to high-level security sources, the operation was quiet, almost invisible. No public meetings, no political negotiations, just a series of discreet conversations with the individuals who stood closest to the president, his bodyguards. These weren't mere security staff. These were the men who stood within meters of him at all times. They controlled access, handled emergency exits, and had unrestricted proximity to one of the most hunted leaders in Africa. In short, they were the only ones who didn't need to breach a gate to reach him. They were already on the inside. The approach was simple, but chilling. The mystery figure, whose identity remains a classified state secret, made contact with one of the guard units during a routine off-duty cycle. There was no coded language, no vague suggestion. The offer was direct: $5 million, clean, untraceable, delivered in physical currency, not wired, not promised. Along with the money came something else: specially imported ammunition, engineered to pierce armored protection and guaranteed to kill on contact. The logic was brutal. Traore often traveled with minimal barriers between himself and his security. If one of them turned, there would be no time to react. No need for an army, just a moment of hesitation, a raised arm, and a bullet. The men were told there would be no consequences. A vehicle was arranged to extract them within minutes of the assassination. A destination abroad had already been prepared. All that was needed was a betrayal. But what happened next caught everyone, including Traore, by surprise. Instead of executing the plan, the guards held a meeting of their own. Whether it was out of conscience, loyalty, fear, or something deeper, they made a decision that would likely save not just one man's life, but possibly a movement. They turned over the money, every note, every bullet, every piece of the plan, and they handed it directly to the president. The look on his face, insiders later said, was not shock. It was a quiet confirmation of something he already knew: that the war against him wasn't just coming from across borders or from exiled politicians. It was now crawling through his corridors, knocking on the doors of his protectors. The arrest that followed was swift, silent, and entirely off-record. The individual who offered the bribe was reportedly detained and immediately transferred into a black site facility. Not a prison, but a location used for high-value intelligence extraction. Officials refused to reveal his nationality. No public trial, no photos, no name. But in the intelligence world, the questions began piling up. Who had $5 million to casually spend on a political murder in one of Africa's poorest countries? Who had access to advanced ammunition normally restricted to special operations forces? Who had the confidence to approach elite presidential guards with a proposal this bold? No answers were given. But the silence itself spoke volumes. And yet what mattered most in that moment wasn't who sent the man. It was who refused to obey. The guards could have taken the money. They could have fled the country, changed their names, and disappeared into luxury. But they didn't. They stood still. And by doing so, they did something far rarer than loyalty. They disobeyed a global system that expected them to be bought. What made this plot more terrifying than bombs or coups wasn't just its proximity. It was its elegance. No military, no chaos, no media headlines, just a clean hit, followed by a quiet funeral and a replacement government more cooperative with international demands. A reset disguised as a tragedy. But the plan failed. And the failure revealed a disturbing evolution. Traore's enemies no longer needed to plan big operations. They had realized the truth. They only needed one man in the right place to say yes. The fact that he didn't, that none of them did, was not just an act of discipline. It was a declaration. Even in a world where everything has a price, some things remain priceless. Yet in the silence that followed, one haunting realization lingered. If $5 million wasn't enough to buy betrayal, how much more would they offer next time? The man with the briefcase didn't succeed, but he didn't need to. Because by the time $5 million was offered in cold blood, the strategy had already evolved. Traore's enemies weren't just improvising, they were adapting, learning, reshaping their methods. And if you stepped back far enough, a shape began to emerge. not of chaos, but of design. These were never random attempts, never isolated stabs in the dark. When each failed plot is pinned to a wall, its date, its method, its targets, a web begins to appear. And the lines connecting them don't lead to revenge or emotion. They lead to something far more calculated: disruption through layered pressure. What stood out first was the timing. Every operation, every attempt, every betrayal unfolded at a critical juncture, not during peace, not during administrative downtime, but at precise political moments. After a controversial policy, after a new alliance, after Traore closed another door on foreign influence. These attempts weren't designed to simply eliminate a man. They were coordinated efforts to reverse momentum. Take a closer look. The football match plot? It wasn't just a random sports event. It happened days after Burkina Faso announced its intention to review all military agreements with France. The failed coup attempt came directly on the heels of a major announcement about revising mining laws and reallocating contracts to local entities. And the bribe, that came just after Traore declared the creation of a new state-owned gold refinery, threatening to block multinationals from exporting raw wealth unchecked. Every plot mirrored an act of sovereignty. As if for every bold decision he made, a consequence was designed and executed by those watching from afar. But timing is just the first layer. The second is the method of attack. Each attempt relied on a different access point, one through physical destruction, one through institutional reversal, one through psychological compromise. There was no repetition. Each operation tested a new boundary, trying to find where the weak spot was. In security, in loyalty, in the Constitution, or in the man himself. This is the fingerprint of intelligence work, not militia movements or angry factions, but trained professionals who understand systems. People know that if you can't take down the walls from the outside, you exploit the door hinges from within. Then there's the third layer, the disinformation campaigns that shadowed each incident. After every failed attempt, rumors surged, claims that Traore was unstable, that factions within the military were losing faith, and that the president had lost control. These narratives didn't originate from local journalists. Many were traced to foreign platforms and anonymous accounts seeded in francophone information spaces. What this suggests is not just an intent to kill, but to delegitimize, to create confusion, and to fracture trust. The goal was never just to take a life. It was to dismantle an image. The idea was simple. Even if you don't succeed in killing the body, you can still erode the soul of the presidency by seeding suspicion, doubt, and fear.
You know, Africa is a place where one of the things hindering Africa from progressing is the bad eggs we have here. You know, the bad eggs we have here. Not just about it's not just about the West, you know. Yeah, they are also contributing to it, but come on, without working in hand with the Africans, with the greedy Africans, I'm talking about the greedy ones, without working together with them, some of their motive will be difficult to achieve, you get. So Africa is poor, Africa is not moving forward. It's because of those bad leaders we have. And Africa is a place where when a leader emerges and tries to challenge the status quo that has been going on, he or she becomes bad in the eyes of other scrupulous leaders, you know. And this is actually what is happening in Burkina Faso and also in the lives of ibrahimtraore. Come on, this man is saying what's happening in Africa. This man saw what's happening in Africa, and he saw what's happening in Burkina Faso. How the jihadist group is taking over the population of the country, attacks, insecurity happening on, and he decided to emerge as the president. He saw the loopholes, the failure of the president to tackle the pressing issues in the state or in the country, and he decided to lead a military coup in order to overthrow the president, and that was how he became the president. And that's actually happened in 2022, around September thereabouts. And glory be to God, for the past 2 years he has become nothing but the best leader in Africa. I must tell you, ibrahimtraore is the best leader in Africa. If you look at the things he is doing, you will know that he is not stopping until he makes sure that every member of Burkina Faso, like every person in Burkina Faso, feel the impact of having a right leadership in a country. This is ibrahimtraore always meeting with his people, He's always down to the grassroots. He is a president that you don't see him in private jets. You don't see him always flying from one country to the other. He's a president that you don't see him as a puppet. You don't see him worshipping the oppressors. You don't see him mingling with the slave masters. You don't see him in luxury cars. The way he has been when in military, that was how he's always been. But unlike other African leaders, most especially Nigerian leaders, because I'm always talking about Nigeria because that's where I'm coming from. And as you can see, look at my president. This is my president dancing in merriments with his fellow politicians, those looting the country down, those looting the country dry. Why the citizens of this Nigeria are crying, they are hungry. This Tinubu is here, dancing and shaking. But you see ibrahimtraore doing the best for his people. And that now makes everybody hate him. That's just it. The hatred from many leaders, many African leaders towards this young man is not just because he's a military, no, but because he is doing what they are not doing. He is doing what the other African leaders has failed to do. He is always fighting the West. Imperialism. Being in your country, trying to take over our country. We don't accept that. That's just it. That's just the problem. And everybody is seeing him as an enemy. Everybody is seeing him as a threat, thereby trying to assassinate him, thereby trying to take away him by force, take him out of the sight by force. A lot of young leaders who actually took this path this young man is taking, people like Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, Mohamed Gaddafi of Libya, these guys ended up being killed, by the West through those in the country, because imperialism won't happen without the cooperation of an African or someone in the country. It's always the West using someone to achieve their aim without having the interest of the masses. That's how it is. So without these people, without these Africans who are always doing like chameleon, who are always behaving like they are with you, meanwhile they are not with you. So without these people, the West won't have control of anything. But of course, there is always a deal to strike. There's always a deal to strike. And to show how greedy we are, to show how greedy a black man is against his brother, he will fall to such a deal. That has always been the problem. Ibrahimtraore came to change the whole narrative. He came to change the idea. Yes, that was. He came because many Burkina Faso's president has failed to tackle the ongoing issues, especially the security issues happen. And so far, we all have seen what this young man is doing. Despite, yes, it's not easy. We are not saying the whole problem has been solved, no. But I can tell you the past 2 years has been more better economically, politically, and in terms of security. It has been more better than the previous years. I think the people of Burkina Faso can attest to this. I'm not from Burkina Faso, but when you see this young man come out and you see the kind of crowd of people that follows him, the kind of people that cheers him up. Even when he comes in Ghana, when he went to Ghana, during the presidential inauguration of John Mahama, we all see how the crowd, everybody turn out, at the mention of Ibrahimtraore. Everybody was screaming. Why? Because this is a leader who is doing things in favor of the people, not my Nigerian leaders. The ones we have here in Nigeria, they don't send, like, they are greedy ones. They are eating, their stomach has pumped us. The ones who will see you crying and they are dancing. So this is why everybody is singing to the praises of Ibrahimtraore. And now they are there to eliminate him. They want to assassinate him. They want to use the same through someone who is more closer to him. And this is why they are now assessing the security. But you see, we must keep protecting him. While the conscious of security, he keep on being more conscious of his security and all that. We must keep praying for him. Because someone like him comes once in a decade. Yes, someone like him comes once in a decade. A leader who is not afraid to tell you the whole truth. A leader who is not afraid to challenge you. A leader who is putting his life in the line. Come on. How many African leaders can do that? I don't think there is. But Ibrahimtraore is here to change the whole narrative, and we must support him to the best ability we can. Yeah, we must. So, what do you guys think? Here comes to the end of the story. I really wish you enjoyed that part. That beautiful story, man. If you really do, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And don't forget, we must keep praying for Ibrahimtraore, because he is a leader who wants to change the narrative of Africa. Over the years, Africa has been seen as a continent poor, dirty, hungry, name it. But that's not who we are. We are a very rich continent. Just that the leaders, the greedy ones, are dancing to the tune of the West, thereby looting their own countries. But Ibrahimtraore must survive every single assassination attempt. He must survive it, because God is with him. So thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, subscribe and like the video. Thank you, and God bless Africa. Peace out.